For the 3 years prior to getting my master's degree, I held a practitioner teacher license in the state of Tennessee. So I was licensed to teach mathematics, grades 5 through 12. So I have experience teaching math, middle school math, algebra, geometry, algebra 2, statistics, ACT, SAT prep, and calculus. So any kind of math between the ages of 10 and 18, I've had experience with teaching it, and I have a license to do so. So what is DSJr? What is Data Scientist Junior? It's an online learning boot camp for students ages 9 through 13. The goal of DSJr is to equip our students with basic data literacy, statistics, and data science skills that are necessary for a rapidly changing world and job market. As it stands now, our structure for our lessons is such. We have 3 levels and 1 additional machine learning capstone module. Since we're fairly new, we actually are currently in our first round of level 2. So because we're so new and because this is happening so fast for us, we actually haven't started administering level 3 yet, but we're really excited for the possibility of starting level 3 next week. To give you a little bit more information, each level is 5 sessions long, and each session is 1 hour long. There are several combinations that you can choose from. Many choose the accelerated 5 days a week for 1 week for 1 level. And sometimes parents choose twice a week over the course of 2.5 weeks. But the main gist stays the same, is that each level is 5 lessons and each lesson is 1 hour. At the end, we'll direct you to where, if you're interested, you can sign up and register, and there will be all of that information available online. Last thing I want to point out is that currently our students must begin at level 1, but we're open to developing an admissions test of sorts to allow students to opt out of level 1 and go straight into level 2. That will happen in the future, but currently students, when they enroll first in level 1, then in level 2, and then in level 3, and then hopefully, like I said, our machine learning capstone module on top of our level 3. So at the core of our program is this idea that we want to develop this basic data literacy skills in our students. When people ask me, what is data science? Why do I need to study data science? Or when our students, when they first came in and I asked them, do you know what data science is? Data science is just a made up term. It's not a science. It's a combination of methods for a rapidly changing world. But I think this pictographic really kind of highlights the core pillars of data science. And they are statistics, so a really strong math background, programming, coding, and computer languages, which I know a lot of our students currently or are already in the process of maybe doing that in school or in extracurricular programs. Business context, so it is highly business context centric, depending on what business context you want to use the data science knowledge in. And then the fourth most important one is communication, verbal and written. So what we saw and what I found in myself as a math teacher, in my experience as a math teacher, I would get all of these students, 11th and 12th grade, who just are very STEM focused. They love calculus. They want to go into science and engineering in college. And it turns out that unfortunately, in a lot of public education districts in the United States, statistics just kind of gets to be the ugly younger brother of calculus and of these high level math, multivariable calculus, even sometimes linear algebra, even sometimes in high school. And what ends up happening is that statistics is really pushed to the wayside, and students graduate from high school with hardly any statistical knowledge and a baseline for statistical knowledge to approach the working world. And it turns out that data science has been one of the hottest jobs on the job market for the past 5 years. It's continuing to be at the edge of innovation in any business and in any discipline. For example, when I graduated from the College of William and Mary this past May, I took a job at the Tennessee Department of Education as a data scientist and a data analyst. So in my role, I'm doing data science in an education context, but possibilities are endless. And so we find that, yes, it's very popular for students ages 9 through 13 to be in a Python programming class or an R class or a JavaScript class or even HTML or any of the programming languages, coding classes. But what we find that if we bolster and buttress their coding skills that they're acquiring with a foundational statistical knowledge, then they will be so much more ready to tackle real world scenarios when they're in late middle school, high school, and then when they go off to college and start finding those jobs. Because everywhere you look around you, everybody says now, oh, AI, machine learning, artificial intelligence, machine learning. Everybody wants to, those are the hottest things right now. But very few people know that at the core of AI and machine learning is data science. If you don't understand data and you're not fluent in data, then there's no way that you can build a machine learning model or work on a team to develop any kind of neural network or AI. And so I hope that that gives you motivation for why this is the best time for students to start interacting with data science in this age, like late elementary school, early and throughout middle school. And so to kind of just give you a visual for this process, so AI, machine learning, all of these really big, fancy buzzwords that everybody talks about, analytical models, algorithms, what are they? They're really just models that take in a bunch of data and they output a bunch of data. And what we're doing in this program is supporting students with developing this first step, okay? So everyday AI, machine learning, and data science, you've interacted with it if you own any kind of personal assistant at home, a Google Home, and Amazon Alexa, that's AI. Netflix recommendation system, it's machine learning. COVID-19 models to talk about the projections for COVID-19 in the coming months, that's all data science. And all of that, the foundation of that is having an understanding of all of that data that comes in. And so, like I said, this first step is what we're really focusing on right now in our program. You may have heard also building an AI or building a machine learning model requires a couple of steps. Maybe you or your student have heard or used the term like training model and training data set, or testing the model or testing data set. All that is using all of the input data that comes in order to train the model. You can't really train a model, much like you can't really train a baby, or you can't really train a pet unless you show it a bunch of data again and again and again. You can do this, but you can't do that. That's kind of like the very naive way of looking at training and training a machine learning model. And then you test it, you give it a test. Can I do this? Can you sit? Can you roll over? Just like you're training a dog, for example. And what you need is data. And again, that's why it's so important that we develop this data knowledge in our students at a young age. So the core progression of our program is really focused on this generalized data science process. I show this slide to my students in level 1. I ask them, what do you think a data scientist does? And we talk a little bit, and then we say, I show them the answer, and it's 5 steps. It's a data collection process, then a data organization, data evaluation, data exploration, and the creation of analytical models. And what we do in level 1 is basically dip our toes into each of those 5 steps for each of the 5 days we have in level 1. In level 2, we submerge a little bit more. We engage with each of these 5 steps a little bit more, and further in level 3 as well. So the first step in the data science process is collecting, organizing data. We teach kids how to use a data table, what a data table is, what rows and columns are. We teach kids how to manually input records into a data table. And then in level 2, we teach them how to automate the data collection process by using a Google form, for example. We organize the data that way. The next step is evaluating data and making sure that our data is of a good enough quality. So we spend a lot of time in level 1 and even more time in level 2 looking at data tables that have mistakes, or maybe there's data that is of poor quality, doesn't make sense. And we try to build in students the intuition of what is good data. If my feature is the year that building was built, does it make sense that one of my records is a word, a yes or a no? Or if I'm measuring age, the ages of my students in my classroom, does it make sense that one of my records is blue or green? No. So we teach students how to detect and identify those obvious data anomalies, but also some more nuanced data anomalies as well. Not only do we do that, but we also teach them how to fix those data anomalies. So it becomes embedded in the intuition of our students that data is not immutable, that people make mistakes, that sometimes people are inputting something in a computer and it's mistaken. And it's their job as a data scientist junior to identify all of those mistakes. And truly, as someone who's worked with data as a data scientist, I understand that that's probably, maybe if we have any data scientists in the audience, you understand that that's probably the most cumbersome and the most tiring and the longest step. And then in level 2, we really hammer home this idea of garbage in, garbage out. So no matter if you have the most sophisticated AI model, the most sophisticated machine learning model, whatever, if you don't have good data, if you have garbage data coming in, you're going to have garbage data coming out. And so that's what's really important, and that's what we stress on in our program. We spend a lot of time also, and I know we have a couple of students in the audience, so maybe this might look familiar. We spend a lot of time working on exploratory data analysis. So we try to teach students how to visualize data. We do that in Google Sheets and also on a platform called Tableau, which you may be familiar with. These they turn out to be the most fun and the most popular lessons, because Tableau is so engaging, it's so colorful, as you see, it's so kid-friendly. And I know that some of my students have spent hours just trying to come up with new ways to visualize their data. In the same step, we also teach our students that sometimes a particular visual or a chart or a graph might not be the best choice for a particular feature. And I know in my experience, and maybe in your experience with your students, that sometimes the easiest chart to make is a pie chart. That seems to be the easiest and also the most attractive for students who are just starting to engage with data visualization. So they'll make a pie chart first, or they'll make a 3D pie chart, as I'll show you work from one of my students later. And it's really kind of disheartening to have to look at a student and tell them, hey, I know this looks cool. It's a 3D pie chart. It's different colors, different slices, but a 3D pie chart, or even worse, a 3D donut chart, a pie chart with a hole in the middle, is probably one of the worst choices of a data visualization that you can choose in any setting. So we have some conversations about different visualizations and when it's appropriate to use which one. And then finally, in level 2 and level 3, we start talking about, so after we've done all of that data pre-processing and data work and exploratory analysis, we talk about how do we start creating an analytical model for an AI or for a machine learning model. So we have our data, we want to create a model, for example, to make a prediction. Am I going to win this basketball game? Is the new baby going to be a boy or a girl? How many more months do we have to be in quarantine? All of those questions are questions that we could train with some input data. As long as the data is good, we can make predictions using those data. You can ask pretty much any question within reason, and we'll probably find some data set out there that can help support you in building a model to answer that question. So really quickly, I just want to highlight that our core curriculum is 3 levels. Our first level is called the data digger. Our second level is the intermediate, is called the data detective, and we have students in our second level right now. And we're still deciding on the mascot for the third level, but it's our advanced, it's coming soon. Hopefully we'll start teaching next week. But like I said, I'm not going to read through them, but I'm just going to very quickly kind of skim over them. So the introduction, we're assuming that students have no prior engagement with any part of the data science process. So the most that we ask our students have is a basic understanding of arithmetic, arithmetic, plus, minus, times, and divide, that they understand what a percent is. So ratios, fractions, percents, and decimals. So they have that understanding, and that they can read a coordinate plane. So they understand what an x-axis is, what an x-axis is, what a y-axis is, and they can point to things point to a point on a coordinate plane based on those coordinates. If your student has those skills, then they are more than ready to start level 1, where we talk about the data table, we identify basic data issues, we introduce visualizing in Sheets and Tableau, we do some formulas in Excel, and we start an introduction on analytical models. And currently in level 2, we're doing all of that, but a little bit more advanced. We also talk about building and recording macros in Excel. We visualize bivariate data, and we do some basic data transformation as well. We're going to continue to push those ideas and those skills in level 3. As I'm speaking, really the only thing I can see is my slides. So once again, I really highly encourage you to record your questions. If you want to put the questions in the chat, feel free to do so. But I hope that these things are starting to maybe encourage you to ask some questions. And I'm really excited about the Q&A at the end. And this is an example of the certificate that your student will receive at the end of each level. So this is level 1. Connor Lucas Chang received the Data Digger certificate. That's the certificate for level 1. And it's just a cool thing to have. It is a great accomplishment to have completed, I would say, really fun, but also pretty rigorous the boot camp of sorts. And so we just graduated our first round of level 1 students, and this Friday we'll graduate our first round of level 2 students. So it's really exciting for us. And then finally, I want to very quickly touch on this this capstone module, which will come after level 3. We are currently developing it, and we're currently trying to test out how we want to teach it. But basically, it is a machine learning capstone in Scratch. Now, some of you may be familiar with Scratch as maybe from school, maybe if your student has a computer science class in school, or if you've enrolled your student in any kind of, when they were younger, maybe any kind of coding after school program or anything like that. But if you're not familiar, it's basically a programming language that teaches students the core basics of teaching students how to code in a grid. So you'll see they'll have a character here in a grid, and it's basically just baby computer programming. But I say baby, but I don't mean to minimize it because there's so much that a student can learn in Scratch. Now, I want to make the distinction that our program, the capstone class after level 3, is not a Scratch class. So it's not a coding class. So students coming in are not coming in for the sole purpose of learning how to use Scratch. We'll teach them how to use it if they don't have prior experience, absolutely. But what we will do is that we'll use the Scratch environment as the environment onto which we build a machine learning model and a program. So for example, for this screenshot, you'll see that this is a Pac-Man game that someone has built in Scratch. So they built the Pac-Man game in Scratch. Like I said, this is not a Scratch class. We're going to talk about all the data that comes in order to build this Pac-Man game, and all the data that needs to come out in order to visualize this Pac-Man game. And one of the ideas that we have is If it's a class of 5 or 6 students, for example, what we'll end up doing is we're collecting data from 5 different sources, and we're combining all of that data to make our training set. Remember those words from earlier, to make our training set for our model, in this case, Pac-Man, pretty big. So that's kind of the idea that we're working with right now. And if you have experience with machine learning or AI, and if you have any input, then we would definitely love to have your input about how we can optimize this learning experience for our students. And then finally, we'll give you an example of this is the kind of input data for specifically the Pac-Man game. So every student is actually in charge of a little chunk of the input data, the training data. And so, yes, we use Scratch to develop the game, but really the core focus of this class is learning what to do with input data and how to use the data to train the program. And I say Pac-Man just as an example. There's hundreds of different examples that we can, different games or different models that we can make. So if your student doesn't like Pac-Man, that's okay. We just use this as an example for the slide. So I am going to stop here for now, and I'm going to transition to Tableau. And I want to very quickly show you what Tableau is, how we use it, and very quickly give you a brief mini lesson on Tableau in exactly the same way that I would teach my students. Some of you may have used Tableau in the past, so if I do anything wrong, please forgive me. But basically, this is Tableau. It's an environment for data exploration and visualization. It kind of looks like Excel. So if you're familiar with Excel, the basic framework, the basic skeleton of the environment is kind of the same. You have data sources down here, and then you have sheets. Okay, so for this tutorial, I have a data set of video games. So by the way, I'm in teacher mode right now. And everything that I'm about to say and everything I'm about to communicate is what I would communicate to my students. So I hope that it's rigorous enough, but also easy enough to understand. So the first thing we'll do is we want to look at the features that we have in our data set. And we see we have some categorical features like name, genre, publisher, some numeric features like rank, and all these different fans based on region, North American fans, European fans, Japanese fans. And we have a date feature, which is the year. So I'm interested first in comparing the different numbers of fans based on region. So I want to look at my features up here on the left, and I'm going to choose the features that are interesting to me. The features that are interesting to me to answer this question are all of the fans from the different regions. So I'm going to take the EU fans, the Japanese fans, the North American fans, the other fans, and the global sales, the global fans overall, the total. Now, this is a moment where I would stop and I would ask my students, hey, you did what I asked you to. You put everything in all of the features that we want to visualize in the sheet, but does this make sense? Are you able to present the data in a new and readable and interpretable way? Many students will immediately be able to say no, because we have these 5 different bars, but there's no way really to compare them. Maybe if I'm very critical, I can look at the scale on each bar, and maybe I can see that the EU fans go up to 4K, but the North 4,000, but the North American fans go up to almost 30,000. So maybe I can see that, but that's not the point. Many of my students will say, well, the point of making a visualization is to take data that's hard to read and interpret from a table and make it immediately easy and clear to read. And so we'll play around with this. We'll try to figure out what we can do. Some kids will go here to show me. Show me here in Tableau shows you all of the different valid visuals that you can make with your chosen features. And someone will say, hey, I think I can make a clustered column chart or a bar graph. And I'll click it, and automatically everything changes. So now I can start to see something that emerges from the data that was completely unclear to me before. And when this clicks for students, I promise you, sometimes the students are like, oh my gosh, like their eyes widen, they start laughing. They're like, this is like magic. This is so cool, because this is what we started with. We started with just a bunch of rows and columns in a table. And within 5 seconds, using Tableau, a student is able to say confidently that after the global sales, because that's the global, the total, that North American fans are the highest number of fans. So a student is confidently able to say that. And for a student to be able to extract that kind of insight from data after just 10 seconds interacting with an environment like Tableau, I think is really magical. One thing I'd like also for them to do is usually we'll sort it. That way we have it sorted. Sometimes students will like to play around with color. So sometimes students will color based on frequency, like this. Sometimes students will color based on the measure name, like this. So now each measure has a different color. So that's one example. Another example is I want to compare the, let's see. I want to first, well, let's try to make a pie chart first. So I want to compare I want to do the same comparison, but in a pie chart. So a student will do the exact same thing. I move them all up here. And if we have any of my students in the audience, even if you're not on level 2 yet, you should be able to know what I'm doing. So students will say, okay, now let's go to show me, let's make a pie chart. Can't make a pie chart. Why can't I make a pie chart? Prior to this, we articulated as a class that a pie chart is, you can't make a pie chart with numeric variables. You have to have categorical features in order to make a pie chart. And so a student will say, okay, well, what if I just include the counts like this? Then can I make a pie chart? No, you can't. You can't make a pie chart by including the counts of each of these. It doesn't make sense. So then we go back to the drawing board. And then I explain to students the difference between categorical and numeric features in Tableau. And in Tableau, you will learn some new vocabulary. You have dimensions and you have measures. And you can't make a pie chart with measures. The measures are down here in green, and they have that pound sign, that hashtag sign students are familiar with. So what I'll do, for example, is, just the EU, North American, and Japan fans. What I'll do is I'll convert them to dimensions. So Japan, I'll convert to dimension. In North America, I'll convert to dimension. Let's see if I can make a pie chart now. So I have North America, Japan, and EU. Let's see if I can make a pie chart with count. Okay, so students at this point will be like, I don't know what's going on. This is really confusing. And I tell them, eye on the prize, like make sure you know, what do you want? What do you want? You want a pie chart? Can I click it now? Yes, I can. Okay, now sometimes this happens and it might not be what the student wants, right? And so we'll stop here. Then I'll go to Google Jamboard, which I will do right now, where I ask students, hey, can you try to articulate for me? Can you explain for me? What is it that we're trying to build? Are we trying to build a pie chart for what? What is it that we're trying to build? And so I'll draw an empty pie chart like this, and then I want students to articulate that, hey, the pie chart that we're trying to build needs to have 3 slices because we have 3 regions. So, okay, 1, 2, 3. And then students will say, okay, so the slices are the the number of fans in each region. And I'll say, okay, so maybe this is North America, and maybe this is EU, and maybe this is Japan. Because looking at the data earlier, we knew that the Japanese fans are the lowest number of fans. And so we keep going, we go back to Tableau, and we fix it. It turns out that we can't actually make a pie chart with this data, so that was my mistake. And then so what happens is I'll give my students tasks. And I'll show you where the tasks are and what they look like in a moment. But I'll give them a couple of tasks, and students will take their time independently developing their own visualization. And I think my training and my experience as a teacher in a whole class setting, but also in my experience in small group and one-on-one settings, I think has made me really attuned to the learning styles of all of my students. And so I don't spend the whole 1 hour block just talking to them or showing them what to do. I show them a discrete skill. Today we're going to make a bar graph, and I show them how to do it. And then they have 2 or 3 examples that they have to do themselves. At the end of that, we come back and everybody gets to share. What I really appreciate about the way that we've built our curriculum here is that I really urge students to share. And I really urge students to not only share their screen, but also share their thoughts. Because you're not really learning unless you're able to articulate your thinking. And I've seen from my experience that that's not always the case in these kinds of like boot camp online environments. And so that's something that I feel like we have a leg up, because your student is here not just to mute their microphone, mute their camera, and kind of work by themselves for an hour. I'm not their babysitter. Instead, I encourage them, and it's demanded of them that they're actively engaging and they're really learning. And I can tell with my students at the beginning that are more shy, maybe they don't like sharing that much. Eventually, I understand that, but eventually they'll start to open up and they'll start to share some of their work. Sometimes I'll call them out in person and I'll say, hey, so-and-so, can you share your screen? Giving a student that opportunity to do that, first of all, makes them accountable to themselves, because as parents, you guys are paying for these lessons. You don't want your kids to just like have me play in the background while they're playing video games, right? So you can guarantee that all of your students are engaging in the lesson. So that's what we'll do. We'll do Tableau for a minute, and then we'll go back and I'll talk to them about maybe what their homework is for the next day, so on and so forth. So one thing I do want to point out is I have a couple of things pulled up that I really want to show you. First, this is what our classroom looks like. So all of your students will be enrolled in a classroom like this. I post, sometimes other students post. I post homework, materials, and questions. Every day there are materials and homework that we've prepared and we've curated and we've polished. So for example, for level 2 materials, there's for level 2 for lesson 1, there's always a slideshow. Sometimes there's an activity like this, which I'll open. I want to show you what it looks like. And it's an opportunity for students to engage with their thinking while I'm teaching. So if I'm teaching a new concept, I always give students an opportunity to write down their thoughts. If they don't write down their thoughts, they might lose that thought and it might go away and they'll forget that they had a good idea. So almost all lessons will have a sheet component like this where students can write in their thinking for specific slides. So we've curated the slides and I've curated the questions so that they answer questions specifically for the slides. This is an example of a data table from class. You'll see it's colorful, it's fun. Sometimes the characters are funny, like Taylor Swift, Harry Potter, Buzz Lightyear, Pikachu. This is some of our student work here, making a histogram. This is some further student work. This is another student who really, really loves visualization. And so I had them create a Google form, ask their family members these questions, and then create visualizations about how many pizza slices do you want, most popular drinks, ranking the toppings and the number of slices, And of course, everybody is going to have a pie chart that's 3D, which after this homework was turned in, I explained this is not a good idea. So we don't want it. We don't want it. But it's really cool to see our students really engage with this material. They really care about this material. They care about learning about it. And it's really fun for them. So I hope I've whetted your interest. I hope that you are interested in enrolling your student in level 1. And we are at 40 minutes past, so we have 20 minutes left. And I'd like to stop now and take questions from the audience. So I'm going to come back to the main screen. I want to see if there's anything in the chat. Okay, I see 7. So I see, okay, so I saw one question was asked and Rachel answered the question. So what I'd like to do now is open up for any question from the audience. Feel free to type it in or feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question.
Well, thank you, Teacher Ronnie. Hi, everyone. I am Rachel Chang. I founded this program with my sister, Peggy Chang. And I would like to thank everyone for coming. And I hope that you enjoyed Teacher Ronnie's presentation. Our students have been really enjoying working with Teacher Ronnie. We have created a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, and the students are producing really impressive work. So we're very happy about that, and we really look forward to having you in our program. And we're having, we are really happy to answer any questions you have. Now, in the chat, we do have a question about whether we're going to teach basic statistic test, concept of significance, causality. These are hard concepts, but great for critical thinking. And I do agree with that 100%. I am a data science professor at College of William Mary, and I do teach these statistical analysis all the time to our students at different levels. And these are great concepts, and they are hard and they're challenging, but they're very, very important. And they are actually the foundation of data science. So I'm glad that our audience is able to recognize that. These are things that we aspire to cover in this program. Hopefully, once we have a sequence of courses on probability and statistic, I am very confident that we'll be able to get to that point. But I would say that would probably require a series of lessons on probability. But yes, statistical testing is important. It's actually at the core of AI and machine learning. All these models, actually, the learning models are really statistical learning models. And so at the core of our curriculum, we will have to cover more and more advanced statistics. So thank you for that question. There's also a question about the intended age groups, breakdowns for students. So far, because we just started, we have been putting all our students in the same level, and we have seen our students mostly range between 9 to 11, and they seem to interact pretty well. And so we don't have a we naturally have been having a relatively narrow age group, but we haven't segregated students by age group yet. But that's definitely something we'll be considering going forward. There's also a question from Master Cheetah about teaching data science, or do we teach any programming and coding? I think Teacher Ronnie kind of mentioned this, and maybe Teacher Ronnie can elaborate on that a little bit more. Do you want to take that question?
Yeah, so none of the, am I muted? No, I'm not muted. So none of the core lessons in our scope and sequence of the lessons, none of them really touch, none of them are centered around programming and coding, because we know that there's so many great coding for kids, programming for kids programs out there. What's our competitive edge and really like the market that we're trying to build and inhabit is the teaching these foundational statistical thinking and data visualization, and just really like a foundational data science. So really currently the most that we do in terms of coding which is not really coding if your child has been doing a Python course. Is not really, I guess, as strenuous. We learn how to build some formulas in Excel. So we learn some basic formulas in Excel. We learn how to structure those formulas syntactically and also what they do. But we also, more importantly, learn not only the structure of the formulas and the syntax, but how the formula interacts with the sheet. So we talk about addressing, we talk about, for example, today we were talking about a row calculation versus a column calculation. And I was able to ask my students, hey, zoom out for a second. I just made a column calculation that was an average. So I just calculated the average of this feature. How do you predict that that will look on a chart versus when you create a new column and you do row calculations to create each new record for a column, how do you predict that that will look on a visualization or on a chart? And we talk about the interactions and the relationships between these discrete formulas and their data table at large. Now, eventually, when we start to give the machine learning capstone, we will have to do the building and the syntax of coding in Scratch. So that's when we'll address that. But for now, if a student doesn't like programming or coding, or if a student likes it and is already in a Python class or a JavaScript class, or whatever, we're not trying to replace that. We're actually just trying to develop the skills that surround that with the student. So I hope that answers the question.
So thank you, Teacher Ronnie. And I would like to elaborate that I think our focus is more on computational thinking than any particular programming language. And you will see programming concept popping up in lots of different places. So for example, we'll teach logical conditions, we'll teach if statement conditions, we'll teach loops. So these are all very core computational thinking skills that is available in all programming tasks. So we don't focus on particular language, but we do embed all these computational thinking skills in a lot of our more advanced lessons. So for example, we are very quickly going to start introducing macros and automation in our level 2 courses, and we will start to show them some JavaScript that automates the Google Sheets. We are not going to teach a full-blown JavaScript language course. However, we want students to know that the power of computational thinking and how these concepts are actually applied in all steps of data science. And I also want to sort of echo what Teacher Ronnie was saying, which is a lot of our students actually have taken programming before. My son actually knows at least 5 different programming languages. However, knowing programming language does not necessarily mean that the student has skills in data science. So understanding the data tables, thinking about data, thinking about statistics is an important, but it's a relatively separate skill set from coding. Both are very important. So I wouldn't say knowing statistics alone is not going to make you a data scientist. You need both programming and statistics.
It sounded like someone had unmuted themselves maybe to ask a question.
Yes, that's going. Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. Now is time for Q&A, and we would love to hear from you.
No, my son made a mistake.
Oh, okay. No worries, Going. Thanks for coming, by the way. We actually, I think we have some students here. Do we? Do we have anybody who's currently enrolled in the program? I think we do. I recognize some names.
Yeah, I don't want to call them out.
Yeah.
What I can do now is I can go back to the slides because there are some questions. We don't have to answer them, but those are things that we have a frequently asked questions slide at the end of our slides. Let me just reshare my screen really quickly. These are some of the things that a couple of you have already asked, and many parents have asked in the past. Why do kids need to learn data science? My child always knows coding is the course, already knows coding. Is the course going to be too easy? My child doesn't know any coding. Is the course going to be too hard? My daughter is advanced in math. Is the course going to be too easy? My son cannot sit still in a lecture presentation. Is this not for him? And level 1 course seems too easy. Can we skip it and start with level 2? Those are some of the most frequent questions that we got when we first started recruiting. And I hope that throughout the presentation, you've, especially these questions, you've gotten the answers for them. And let me see if, okay, so this is our website, if you're interested. This is our website, www.dj, this is wrong, DSJr.io. So it's datasciencejunior.io. You can sign up for classes there. There's all information about signing up there. But also, if you have any questions, then you can email us at help.en@dsjr.io. So if you didn't have a chance to ask your question, if you have any questions, or if another question comes up that we didn't answer, I really highly encourage you to email us. All 4 of us that work on this team are active on the email, and so one of us will be able to reach back out to you very, very quickly. But this is the website that where you can sign up your student. And I hope that all of you will sign up your students.
I would also like to emphasize that our team, our teachers are highly trained. We all have advanced degrees in statistics, data science. I teach this professionally. Our teacher, Ronnie, is a real data scientist, and our Chinese instructor, Peggy Chang, has advanced degrees in information systems and statistics. So we're all academically trained, and we have years of experience bringing to the table. So this is something that is academically rigorous. We have put a lot of thought into how to design this to be engaging and academically relevant. And there's a lot of theory, a lot of thought behind this. So I hope that you see that we are trying to deliver the best quality education to your children.
Are there any other questions in the chat? I can't see because I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, we did get quite a few questions, so that's great. And I believe we have addressed all of them. I know that you will probably have to think about this and discuss with your family or reach out to us and ask additional questions later on. Just like what Teacher Ronnie said, we're here for you, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions or have discussions. And you can call us. We can get on Zoom. You could try something. If you want to see some of the lessons, we can show you maybe recordings or additional materials that will help you make a decision. We also have existing students who can advocate for us. We have testimonials, some really cute things that our students have done. So if you want to see any of that material, feel free to reach out to us.
I echo all of that, and I did want to add one more thing. I know, because I've been a teacher and I'm working in education context now, I know that schools are starting to start back up. Here in Tennessee, where I live, all the schools are on online for the next month. And so I know that maybe you may be not very open to enrolling your student in an extracurricular as they transition back from summer vacation back into school and online school at that. And so I just want to assure you that we understand that, and we know that schools are starting to start back up for students, and that we will offer for the next couple of rounds, starting in the next couple of rounds, we're going to start offering much more flexible schedules. And so in the summer, the most popular one was the 5 days a week, and you finish with a level just in 5 days. In the morning, there's a morning class and there's an afternoon class. And we know that when school starts, that's not going to be very possible. So we are going to be offering much more flexible schedules. So if the scheduling issue is an issue for you, I just want to assure you that we are very flexible.
Yeah, and also if you have any preference, as we put together a schedule, your feedback is welcome. If you have any preference in terms of weekend, morning, evening, frequency, feel free to tell us. You know, we're early stage, and so you do have a great opportunity to provide your feedback and make a difference on how we design the schedule.
Great. And then the last thing is, if you have any feedback for this presentation in particular, if you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you have any thoughts about it, we also encourage you to send an email with feedback about this presentation to this email address, help.en@dsjr.io. That way we know to adapt it for the future. And I believe if there are no more questions, then we can bid everybody good night. And do you agree?
Yeah,
Rachel?
Yes. Well, thank you everybody for coming. I know this is like around dinner time and bedtime, so I know you made a lot of effort out of your way to come join us. So we appreciate that very much. It's very nice to meet all of you, and we hope to see you in our Data Science Junior program.
Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Good night, everyone.